Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We start with Honduras, where 18 inmates have been killed while 16 are injured in clashes at a jail in northern port town of Tila. The National Penitentiary Institute said 17 victims died at the facility, while another died in the hospital. Prison spokesperson said several inmates were armed with guns that slowed down the operation. Security officials seized 5 9mm guns and ammunition from the inmates. Honduras has recently seen a spike in prison killings. Earlier on Tuesday, President Juan Orlando Hernandez ordered the army to take over the country's 27 prisons. Meanwhile, in India, 17 people have been killed in Uttar Pradesh in a violent protest against the controversial Citizenship Act. This brings the death toll to 25 in over a week of unrest sparked by the contentious law that grants nationality only to non-Muslim immigrants. The Indian government has shut down the internet in Delhi, Lucknow, Kanpur, Meerut and 18 other cities of Uttar Pradesh. In Delhi, police arrested 40 people, including 8 minors, from a massive protest outside Jamia Masjid. Meanwhile, after West Bengal, the Indian states of Kerala and Bihar have opposed the new law and it put it on hold. The states have cited apprehension among the general public about its consequences. Moreover, India has put curbs on news media, stopping it from covering protests against the citizenship law. In a notice, the government has issued an advisory for channels to follow while covering demonstrations. The Information Ministry has ordered media outlets to stop all content which will hurt the country's integrity. The notice said channels must not show anti-national content instigating violence. It also said channels must not air videos and content which will negatively affect the country's morale. Pakistan has rejected India's claim of a major exchange of fire in Kiran and Neelam Valley along the line of control. Pakistan military said it is befittingly responding to intermittent ceasefire violations by the Indian Army along the line of control. Military spokesperson Major General Asif Ghafoor said Pakistan Army has responded to unprovoked Indian aggression in Diva sector. He said there were reports of heavy casualties and damage to army posts on the Indian side. The spokesperson's statement followed a claim by the Indian media that heavy exchange of fire had taken place along the LOC. India's cyber security chief has accepted that Pakistan is dominating the narrative warfare under its military's media wing. Retired Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant said India needs a unified public relations command for the Indian military. Pant said Pakistan has got its act together in the cyber war under Director General Inter-Services Public Relations Major General Asif Ghafoor. He said all 3 wings of Indian armed forces have their separate public relations officers with no sense of coordination. Mr. Pant said Pakistan was successfully spreading its narrative on issues like Kashmir and regional instability. And moving on to Libya, Libya's east-based army claims to have seized a Turkish ship to search and verify its cargo. In a statement, Haftar forces said Grenada-flagged ship was taken to the port of Ras Al Hilal near the eastern city of Derna. Earlier, the Turkish parliament approved a security and military cooperation deal with the Tripoli-based Government of National Accord. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said Ankara is ready to send troops to Libya, but no request has been made by the GNA. In Somalia, a suicide car bomb attack has killed 7 people and wounded dozens in the north-central town of Galkayo. Somali military said the bomb went off outside a hotel where senior military officials were staying. It said the driver had failed to enter the hotel compound and instead hit a military pickup parked outside as a barrier. No one has yet claimed responsibility for this attack. In Syria, airstrikes by the government and Russian warplanes have killed 16 people and wounded 36 in Idlib. According to the United Nations, intensified bombardment in the area has forced tens of thousands to flee their homes. A war monitor said 140 combatants have been killed since Thursday. Idlib is the last major stronghold of rebels fighting government forces since 2015. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Russia and China's veto of a Security Council resolution that allows humanitarian aid to Syrians is shameful. In a statement, Pompeo said both countries have blood on their hands after opposing the resolution. Russia and China vetoed the resolution extending cross-border humanitarian aid to 4 million Syrians for a year. It is the second time in 4 months Russia has barred a Syrian aid resolution. It would have allowed cross-border humanitarian deliveries for 12 months from 2 points in Turkey and 1 in Iraq. Hong Kong riot police swept into several shopping malls, chasing off and arresting anti-government demonstrators. The protesters gathered to put forward their demands in the peak shopping weekend before Christmas. Dozens of riot police stormed into the mall to chase protesters off. A sushi restaurant's windows were smashed and shops were forced to close as clashes between police and protesters grew. Hong Kong has been rocked by protests since June, when the government introduced a controversial extradition bill, which was later withdrawn. Travelers across France scramble to begin their Christmas getaways as trains are cancelled and roads are jam-packed due to the ongoing pension strike. Hopes of a holiday truce were dashed after talks between the government and the union leaders this week failed to ease the standoff. The train operators have issued a warning that the traffic will be severely disrupted over the festive period. 2 weeks of nationwide strike against President Emmanuel Macron's planned pension system have disrupted railways and roads. Over 500,000 people have come out on the streets of Paris to pressure the government into taking back the pension reform bill. Unions have called for stoppages to continue over the holiday period. Meanwhile, President Emmanuel Macron says 33 militants have been killed in an operation by French forces in central Mali. Speaking to the French community in the Ivory Coast, Macron says 2 hostages held by militants in the city of Mopti were also released in the operation. France is the only Western country with a significant military presence waging counterinsurgency operations in Mali and the Sahel region. Last month, 13 French soldiers lost their lives in a helicopter crash during an anti-terror operation in northern Mali. The crash was the biggest single-day loss for the French military in nearly 4 decades. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK hopes to have better relations with Russia. In an interview, Johnson said London expects to improve commercial relations and enhance trade volume with Moscow. Johnson is on a one-day visit to Estonia to meet with the British soldiers serving in the Baltic country. Praising NATO, he said it has been the most successful military alliance of the past 5 centuries and has a great future. He also said the country wants to move past Brexit.
What everybody wants to do is put Brexit behind us on January the 31st, then move on. And there's a lot of goodwill, a lot of energy now about building the new deep and special partnership, and that's what we're going to do.
Welcome back. Now, in Cuba, Manuel Marrero Cruz has been named as the first prime minister in more than 40 years. President Miguel Diaz-Canel appointed Marrero to the post, scrapped in 1976 by the revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. The position was reinstated under a new constitution passed earlier this year. Marrero's appointment as head of the government is part of decentralization process and generational change from the revolutionary old guard. He has been serving as tourism minister for 15 years. The position of prime minister was last held by Fidel Castro in 1976. In the U.S., 6 people have died and 13 others were injured in a fire at a building in downtown Las Vegas. Fire officials said the blaze displaced over 35 people. Authorities say the accidental fire started around a stove in one of the apartments on the first floor. Officials say damage is currently estimated at $475,000. Las Vegas authorities are calling it the deadliest fire in the city's history. Twenty people have died and 11 injured after a passenger bus and a truck collided in eastern Guatemala. Authorities say the passenger bus was traveling to the city of Santa Elena near the country's border with Mexico. In a tweet, Guatemala's President Alejandro Giammattei has expressed profound grief over the deaths. Firefighters say the truck appeared to have collided with the bus from behind. They said the cause of the crash remains unclear. A scorching heat wave has intensified the bushfires ravaging Australia. Temperatures are expected to peak at 47 degrees Celsius in New South Wales and West Sydney. Fire department officials said an expected wind change would aggravate the already catastrophic conditions. Officials say only rain can help them control the onslaught of bushfires. Sydney is shrouded in toxic smoke as blazes flare just 130 kilometers from the country's largest city. Fires have burned over 7 million hectares of land, killing 10 people and destroying over 800 homes. U.S. President Donald Trump has officially launched a new branch of the U.S. military focused on warfare in outer space. The new military service, the first in over 70 years, falls under the U.S. Air Force. This report has more details.
At an army base in Washington, Trump signed a new $738 billion defense policy bill into law, which officially creates the new Space Force. He said space is the world's newest war-fighting domain. Trump said America's superiority in space is vital amid grave threats to its national security.
Space is the world's newest war-fighting domain. Amid grave threats to our national security, American superiority in space is absolutely vital. And we're leading. But we're not leading by enough, but very shortly we'll be leading by a lot. The Space Force will help us deter aggression and control the ultimate high ground.
The launch of the Space Force will be funded by an initial $40 million for its first year.
In Poland, artists have created a miniature town out of gingerbread. The elaborate cookie creation features 273 houses, a church and a castle. Details on Sweet Christmas in this report.
This city is home to hundreds of gingerbread people. The wonderful aroma of ginger and cinnamon this work of art gives off is a Christmas treat in itself. It took 3 bakers in Poland's Gliwice 4 months to create this masterpiece.
Take 300 eggs, 66 pounds of sugar and 26 gallons of honey. Mix it all, add coloring and have 3 people sugar coat it. You'll get it done.
The impressive castle is made of over 3,500 gingerbread bricks. The Gingerbread Wonderland is on display until 28th February.
In the South Atlantic Ocean, scientists are on a mission to search for an underwater mountain called Mount Weema. The marine life here is rumored to be flourishing after an extensive ban on fishing. This Greenpeace research mission is part of the UN treaty to preserve the oceans. More about the revival of Mount Weema in this report.
They're often called sea wolves, nomads who live most of their lives on the ocean. These are the dedicated volunteers who work on board the Greenpeace ships. The seamount rises 4,600 meters from the ocean floor up to around 20 meters below the water's surface. A fishing ban was put in place at Mount Vima in 2007 in the hope it would allow the marine life time to recover. And it has. Greenpeace expedition team leader and marine biologist Thilo Mak has been an activist for 20 years, but he also joins in some of the dives to get a first-hand look at the seamount.
I think this is just the perfect example of what happens if you leave nature on its own for a certain period of time. Even if it was overfished, it will replenish shortly.
Environmental victories like these are exactly the reason Barry keeps going.
If they tell me, Greenpeace tells me tomorrow that there's no more money, there's no more funds to pay me a salary, I would still keep on doing exactly what I'm doing now. No doubt about it.
Life at sea might be tough at times, but for these volunteers, conservation isn't just a job. It's a call for change and a search for meaning.
And now let's take a look at what the weather is like in your city. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. We'll see you again at the top of the hour. For now, goodbye.